What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the Neighborhood Podcast. One of the hosts of the podcast. My name is Kyle Dabro. So, in this video, we're to go over our NFL Week 8 power rankings. Now that Week 8 is finished and done with, we're going to go over the top 10 teams in the NFL at this current moment in time based on what we saw from this past weekend. So, very similar to what we've done in the past. We're going to start at number 10 and then work our way down to the number one team when it's all said and done. So with that said, let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right into it. We're going to focus on the number 10 spot here, and that will be the Cincinnati Bengals. So the Bengals had, and there's no other way to say this, it was a very bad loss against the New York Jets this past weekend. The Jets are not that good of a team, and it was even compounded by the fact that Zach Wilson, their first round draft pick from this past year's draft, was out in this game due to a knee injury that he had suffered a couple weeks back. And their backup, Mike White, had never started in an NFL game before. Well, Mike White single-handedly torched this defense by throwing over for 400 yards and leading the Jets on a huge fourth quarter comeback when they were down two possessions late in this game. So one of the things that I'm focusing on here with Cincinnati is they played solid through the first three quarters of the game. And then I don't know what happened in the fourth quarter, but they just took their foot off the gas pedal. They couldn't get any offensive drives really going. And they just allowed the Jets to come back into this game and take the lead and eventually get the win as well. And it really kind of goes to show just the youth and inexperience when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals team as a whole. They're a good team, don't get me wrong. But I think this game really indicates just the youth that is with this team. And this is one of those growing pain losses. They have a good team so far, but this is a game that they should have won. And, they're still going to be a good team moving forward. It's not like I'm saying, like, oh my God, like they're a team that's in trouble. They're falling apart. No, 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 no. They're going to be in it with the Ravens for the top of the AFC North this season, and maybe even the Steelers, because the Steelers have been on a winning stretch here for the last couple of weeks as well. So, but to me, the Bengals and the Ravens are really the two teams that are going to be fighting for that number one spot, top of the AFC North. But this is one of those games where take it in stride, you learn from your mistakes, and just try to find some ways to hopefully counteract this situation ever happening again for the rest of the season. They're still a good team. They're in my power rankings this week, but they will be at the number 10 spot. And then moving on to the number 9 spot, I have the Las Vegas Raiders. So the Raiders were on a bye week in week 8, but it still worked out for them in a pretty positive way because now they are in sole possession of first place in the AFC West after the Chargers kind of lost a stunning game to the New England Patriots this past weekend. So when I look at the Raiders as a whole, though, they're currently on a 2-game win streak, but obviously the biggest issue with this team right now is getting over what just took place with Henry Ruggs. I mean, Henry Ruggs is no longer on the Las Vegas Raiders after he killed somebody just a couple days ago in a situation where he was driving while drunk and he ended up smashing into somebody's car on his way home. I mean, from what I've read in the reports, he was traveling at over 150 miles an hour when he slammed into this car and killed that person. I don't know if he killed him on impact, doesn't really matter, but that situation is just crazy by itself, and he is no longer on the Raiders. And it's just one of those things with the Raiders that, man, just the off the field issues this year for them in particular have been quite stunning because John Gruden was released, or he was actually, let me take that back. He resigned from his head coaching spot just a couple of weeks ago. And now you add the whole Henry Ruggs situation on top of it as well. It's a lot of things to deal with in a short period of time. But even with all the chaos that has surrounded this team, they find ways to just keep on winning. And if they're able to keep their winning ways despite this Henry Ruggs story that's popped up in the last day or so, this is a good football team. But I will say this, the Raiders are going to have their work cut out for them in the next month or so. So in their next 3 out of their 4 games, they're playing the Chiefs, the Cowboys, and the Bengals. And all of those teams are extremely competitive and they're very good teams this year. So this next month is really going to test the Raiders. And I cannot believe just the situation that took place with Henry Ruggs. And I don't know how the team psychologically is going to be able to bounce back from that. They've been able to bounce back in a good way after the John Gruden debacle that took place, but this is a completely different situation with Henry Ruggs. And I need to see whether or not that this team can actually bounce back mentally from what just took place with Henry Ruggs. So the Raiders are a good team. Derek Carr is playing a phenomenal season so far, but yeah, this is a team that's kind of in limbo right now because I just don't know where this team's head is at right now. It's just been crazy with the Raiders. So, but even with all the chaos that's been around them, I still have them at the number 9 spot. So number 8, I have the New Orleans Saints. Excuse me, I was going to say Tampa. The Saints had one of the most shocking results in Week 8 with upsetting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I think one of the things that really surprised me in this game with the Saints was not the fact that they scored against Tampa's defense. Tampa's defense has been suspect this year in games just because their secondary has been riddled with a lot of injuries to that part of their defense. And the Saints were able to score over 35 points against them, which is pretty solid, as a team that's kind of been an underdog the entire year. But the biggest thing that I want to focus on is their defense. Their defense was pretty solid in this game. Granted, they did give up 4 touchdowns to Tom Brady, but they were able to force 3 turnovers from him. One of them was a strip sack, and then the other 2 were interceptions. And one of those interceptions, which was at the end of the game, was the game-winning interception that led to a pick 6. So this was a great defensive performance from the Saints as far as I'm concerned. And, I mean, they're currently a half game back of Tampa, which is crazy because it seems like Tampa is like head and shoulders above them. But being only a half game back for the Saints here, I mean, that's pretty solid for them about halfway through the season. Now, this win does come with a caveat, though, because Jameis Winston is out for the rest of the year with a torn ACL. And with Trevor Siemian taking that starting role, I don't know whether or not that they're going to be able to carry the momentum for the rest of the season to possibly overtake the Bucs at that number 1 spot in the NFC South. Just my personal opinion on this, I'm not sold on the fact that Trevor can do it. Trevor was able to do some nice plays here and there against the Bucs, but I didn't see the consistency that I was looking for. Granted, he's getting thrusted into that quarterback spot after Jameis goes out, so it's probably been a while for him since he's actually had game reps that actually matter. So I'm not going to jump too much to conclusions with Trevor yet. If I just had to do like a really early one, though, I don't know if he's going to be able to do enough, but I do think that the Saints as a whole, they can be able to rely on their defense to kind of carry them because they actually have a pretty solid defense this year. And I think they're going to have to focus a lot more with getting Alvin Kamara touches in the run game. So he's great out of the backfield in the passing game. I mean, there are games in particular where he could be the leading receiver for the Saints just because he's that effective in the passing game out of the backfield. But I would like to think that they are going to run the ball with Alvin a little bit more just because I don't know if Trevor's going to be the guy to throw the ball 35, 40 times for the Saints moving forward. But, I mean, Alvin Kamara is definitely one of the best running backs in the league, and I definitely think that he'll get an increase in touches moving forward now with the whole situation with Jameis being out for the season. Good team, though. Kind of been an underdog the entire year, but, definitely keep an eye out for this team. They're sitting at number 8, which means something. And the way that they've been playing, I got to commend them for that, and that's why I have them at number 8. So number 7, I have the Tennessee Titans. The Titans had a really tough divisional matchup against the Colts this past weekend. They were able to win over the Colts by the score of 34-31. And they didn't have the best game as a team, but it was enough to get them the win. And this was despite the fact that I thought Ryan Tannehill kind of got off to a shaky start in the first half, but he was able to rebound in a big way in the second half, and he was able to provide Titans some good drives that got them on the board. But one of the biggest caveats from this win as far as Tennessee goes is they lost Derrick Henry at least for the foreseeable future with what seems to be a major foot injury. And We don't know whether or not that he's going to be able to come back for the playoffs. I think they've kind of already ruled him out for the rest of the regular season. From the reports that I've seen so far, they said that he's going to be out for the next 6 to 10 weeks. So, the earliest that he can come back from this injury is a month and a half, which is basically around the middle of December. And if he goes to that 10-week stretch, though, he wouldn't be back until the playoffs then. So, don't really know if Derek's done for the season yet, but it's going to be interesting to see where this team goes because Tennessee, I mean, they currently have a pretty sizable lead in the AFC South. And I don't know if the Colts are going to be able to make that much of a comeback as far as trying to be competitive in the AFC South to get back to that top spot. But Tennessee, they got to focus on trying to do as much as they can in the passing game with Ryan Tannehill, just because I don't know if they're going to be able to get any sort of the run production that Derrick Henry was able to provide for them throughout most of the season so far. I mean, through the first 8 games of the season, Derrick Henry almost had 1,000 yards rushing already, and he was 200 to 250 yards. He had 200 to 250 more yards than any other running back behind him. So, trying to replace that type of workload or that type of production, it's going to be tough for Tennessee moving forward. But they're at the top of the AFC South, and they're still one of the best teams in the AFC. Will it hold? I'm not really 100% sure. But as of right now, I got to commend them for the fact that they are the best team in the AFC South. They've been playing consistent the last couple of weeks. They've had some big wins against some solid teams. And I got to respect them for that. So, with that said, I have them at the number 7 spot. Number 6, I have the Buffalo Bills. The Bills just continue to find ways to keep winning. Currently, they're at the top of the AFC East after they had a solid performance against the Miami Dolphins this past week. And when I look at the Bills as a whole, they are one of the most well-rounded units throughout the entire league. I mean, to focus on their defense here for a second, it's kind of crazy to think that they've played 7 games already, and they're only allowing 15 points a game defensively. And, just the fact that they're able to force turnovers, they're able to get a pass rush, and they're essentially able to stifle these NFL offenses on a consistent basis. Got to respect them for that. And then you tie that in with what they're able to bring on the offensive side of the ball with Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley. This is a well-rounded unit in the NFL. And I think as far as I'm concerned, they're going to continue their winning ways for the foreseeable future. They play the Jaguars upcoming in the next few weeks. Really, the toughest game that they're going to have to play is probably against the Buccaneers, probably around the first or second week in December. But after that, they do have a favorable schedule. So I do expect the Bills to keep winning their games. Maybe the Patriots game could be one where it could be a little bit tough for them because I know they play them twice later this year. So that might be a tough game for them. But I think overall, the Bills are a solid team. They're one of the best teams in the AFC as far as I'm concerned. And that's why I have them at the number 6 spots in this week's power ranking. That's actually the highest team that I have in the AFC, just because, when it comes to these power rankings, really the top 5 teams that I have, they're all in the NFC. It's just that's how good the NFC is this year. So to transition to the top 5, at the number 5 spot, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs had a letdown game against the Saints this past week. And even though that I thought Tom Brady played decent in this game, he did throw for 4 touchdowns. This was one of those games where it was probably one of his worst performances of 2021 so far. Tom Brady had 3 turnovers in this game. One was a strip sack. He had 2 interceptions, and 1 interception was the interception that lost in the game that ended up being returned for a touchdown. So he didn't necessarily have the best game. They got off to a slow start. Granted, they did come back in the second half, but just too much of a hole to get themselves out of. But defensively, they had a letdown game. Allowing over 35 points to Jameis Winston and Trevor Siemian because Jameis tore his ACL, that's not a good look. And granted, I know they've been dealing with injuries on the secondary in that part of their defense, but still, you can't have that. And I think this is a situation where it might have been a trap game for them. This game was right before their bye week because they're not playing in this upcoming week in week 9. And I think they may have just taken their foot off the gas pedal for this game. They may have just been comfortable with thinking that, the Saints are a decent team, but it might have been a situation where they just played down to their competition and didn't take them as seriously as they should have. And they ended up finding a way to lose this game and allowing the Saints to come back into a competitive stance as far as some team that could actually gain the top spot in the NFC South. I don't think that the Bucs are going to lose the NFC South this year. I just think they're too good of a team to let that happen. And with the Saints losing Jameis Winston, I don't really see them overtaking the Bucs, but the Bucs got to be careful moving forward. I mean, they got to recover during this bye week. I imagine they'll get Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, maybe some guys on the defensive side of the ball back from injury. And really, once these guys come back from injury, I mean, these are some key pieces for Tampa here. I think it'll go back to smooth sailing for them. I think realistically, the only game where they might lose moving forward, as far as like tough games that they have on their schedule, is against Buffalo in the first or second week in December. Outside of that, they have a very favorable schedule here. And I don't really see them losing any sort of those games outside of maybe the Buffalo game, because I think they're going to be the favorite to win most of those games. That Buffalo game, honestly, just might be a pick 'em at that point. You could flip a coin and pick a team to win that one. But no, the Bucs are a good team. They just had a letdown game against the Saints in Week 8, but I still think they're a top 5 team in the NFL, and that's why I have them at number 5. So at number 4, I have the Dallas Cowboys. Despite the fact that Dallas did not have Dak Prescott in this game, I thought the Cowboys pulled a really solid road win against Minnesota this past week. The Vikings had kind of been on a winning surge the last couple weeks. We've seen Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, and Adam Thielen and the boys, and Justin Jefferson as well, really put up some solid performances the last couple weeks. But Dallas came through and provided a great win to keep their winning streak alive. And the one point of emphasis I want to hit with Dallas is their defense. I really thought that defensively, the Cowboys had a solid performance against Minnesota. They were able to hold that offense to under 20 points. And I think that's a noteworthy performance. And when I look at the Cowboys as a whole, granted they didn't have Dak in, but once Dak returns from this injury, I think they'll go back to scoring 30 points offensively relatively easily. And, outside of the week 1 loss that they had against the Bucs, they've been a great team. Granted, their defense is a little bit weak, but it's better than what they've had in years past. So this defense is a far cry from what they had just a couple years ago when they were allowing at least 30 to 35 points a game consistently. Now this defense, they do a great job of turning the ball over, getting the ball back to Dak, and getting the ball back into situations where these guys can score touchdowns. So I'm not too worried about the Cowboys offense. I think they'll be fine. Just really the 1-2 combination that they have with Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard, and the wide receiving core that they have with CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. I mean, these guys, they're a solid team moving forward, and I'm just really impressed with what Dallas has been doing this year, and that's why I have them at the number 4 spot. So at number 3, I have the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams just continue to roll this year. They've done a fantastic job in just maintaining their winning ways throughout most of the season. And they had a pretty favorable matchup against the Texans. I mean, they handily destroyed them in Week 8. Matt Stafford is playing at a high level. After he put up, I believe he threw for over 300 yards and had 3 touchdowns in that game against the Texans. The Rams are currently tied with the Cardinals at 7-1, and they're tied for first place at the top of the NFC West. But really the biggest news as far as the Rams go was trading for Von Miller from Denver. That's a huge move for this defense. And when you look at just the defensive line that the Rams are going to have moving forward, you're going to have Von Miller and Aaron Donald just absolutely wreaking havoc on offensive lines moving forward. And it's like, granted, Von Miller is more focused on a pass rusher. And don't get me wrong, Aaron Donald is a great pass rusher, but just what he's able to do as far as just clogging in those gaps for opposing running backs, he's great at that aspect of his game as well. But that's going to be a nightmare scenario for offensive lines to try to counteract. And I think this defensive line is going to be solid moving forward for the Rams. I mean, this is a well-rounded unit altogether. And when you add somebody like Von Miller to the team just gets a lot more stronger in that regard. the Rams are just going to be in a dogfight with the Cardinals for the top of the NFC West this year. So that's definitely going to be fun to watch. They're a top 5 team, in my opinion. Honestly, they could even be number 2 in this one, but I just have the Cardinals ahead of them. But the Rams are at number 3 in my power rankings. So at number 2, I have the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals had a really tough loss against the Green Bay Packers this past week. Granted, they had the Thursday matchup against the Packers, but that was probably the featured matchup of the entire week this past week. And the Cardinals, I thought, did enough to win that game, but Kyler had a bad interception. Literally when the team was ready to score a touchdown with about 25 to 30 seconds left in the game. And there was just miscommunication on that play with AJ Green and Kyler. I mean, AJ was looking like he was blocking the opposing corner he was matched up against, and Kyler threw it right to him. And AJ Green looks back at him like he was never expecting that pass to begin with. So that's how close these games can be. It could literally just be 1 or 2 plays that decide the result of a game, and that was the one that unfortunately caused the Cardinals to lose that game. But overall, though, I mean, I've had the Cardinals at the number 1 spot for damn near the last month. Honestly, I think I've had them at the number 1 spot since like week 3. So they've been a phenomenal team as far as I'm concerned. And, you know, granted, their undefeated season is over, but I'm not going to discredit what the Cardinals have done this season so far. They're a fantastic team. It's just, this is a game that they probably should have won, and they just made a terrible mistake at that last moment of the game. And, you know, you got to give credit to Green Bay. Green Bay made the play that Arizona couldn't. So Arizona's a good team, though. Going to be a dogfight at the top of the NFC West with the Rams by the end of the season. But, you know, that'll be a fun 2-headed monster matchup moving forward towards the end of the season. But Cardinals are a top 2 team in the NFL as far as I'm concerned, and that's why I have them at number 2. And at number 1, I have the Green Bay Packers. Just for the Packers to be able to get that win on the road against the Cardinals, I mean, it's phenomenal. Going into that game, they were missing their top 3 wide receivers, and they were just dealing with a bunch of injuries throughout the entire team. And they were coming into that game on 3 days rest, and one of those days was a travel day where you had to travel from Green Bay out to Arizona. And I was just thoroughly impressed with what that team was able to display against the best team in the Cardinals when that matchup took place. So, granted, I didn't think that Aaron Rodgers had the best game in that matchup, but it was enough to get them the win. But the defense is really what I want to focus on here. The fact that they were able to hold Kyler Murray and that offense to under 30 points on that short of rest. Got to commend them for that. And getting that game-winning interception with 25 to 30 seconds left, it was phenomenal. It was just a heads-up play. That corner made a great read on it, and he was able to get the ball tipped up in the air, and he was able to catch the ball before he went out of bounds. And that's what these games are decided by. It's 1 or 2 plays that could really shift the result of a game, and that was the one that the Packers made. So, you know, when I look at the Packers overall, though, you know, despite the fact that they're the best team in the NFC North at this current moment in time by a substantial margin, I just see them as the best team in the NFL currently right now. So I don't know how long that's going to stand, though, just because they're playing the Chiefs this weekend, and Aaron Rodgers is already out for this game because he tested positive for COVID. So he will not be able to play against his Chiefs this upcoming week. He should be able to play not this week, but the week after. So I do think that the Packers will kind of get back on track once he's back into the lineup. But I just don't have a lot of faith that Jordan Love is going to be able to carry the way, or at least carry this team to the promised land against the Chiefs. I just think that's going to be too big of a mountain to overcome. But no, for this week, though, and this week only, the Packers deserve to be the number 1 team in the NFL. And getting that win over an undefeated Cardinals team at that moment in time, that was pretty big, and I got to commend them for that. And that's why I have them at the number 1 spot. But that rounds out our top 10 for our power rankings, and I really don't have anything else to add. So with that said, you guys, if you guys tuned in, you know, definitely appreciate you guys tuning in and watching our power rankings for the top 10 teams in the NFL at this current moment in time. We will come out with another weekly edition of the NFL power rankings after this weekend's games are over and done with. With that said, though, if you guys liked the video, hit the like button below. If you guys want to support the channel in any way, shape, or form, hit that subscribe button below. Any sort of support that we can get for the channel, Kevin and I definitely appreciate it. I got nothing else to add here, but once again, just thank you guys for tuning in to watch the video. We'll see you guys later.